We're in the Whitehall Boatyard, Annapolis, Maryland, and I'm going to talk a little bit and show a little bit about fixing blisters on fiberglass boats. There is another boat in the yard over that way, an old Rhodes Bounty, built in 1957, one of the first fiberglass boats made. She has no blisters at all. In 1973, during the Iranian hostage situation, fuel prices went up. The cost of fiberglass resin, polyester resin, also went up, and boat builders reduced their costs for boat by buying less expensive and inferior quality resins. So boats since about 1973 have had more and more blisters. Now today, a lot of boats are built with using vinyl ester resin for the first coat. Vinyl ester is less permeable to water, so that blistering doesn't occur as often. It is thawed. This boat is a 1978 Camper Nicholson, built in England. It has a good reputation and is a quality, in most respects, a quality boat, but they do have a reputation of blistering. Another very good boat that has a reputation for blistering is an extremely high quality boat, a Valiant 40s. During the same period, the 70s, some of the Valiant 40s were built using a fire retardant resin. Good idea, but the resin, this fireproofing material in the resin, caused massive blisters. As you can see on this hull, this has a lot of blisters that have been cut out. The first step in repairing the blistering on this boat was to power wash the bottom and then sand it lightly using this tool. And when you sand the bottom paint, the clean bottom paint with this tool, it will expose each blister. For example, there's a blister here. The sander has cleaned it off. There's another one here. You can see it. And in other areas of the hull, they are exposed. And then, after you've done that, you've exposed all the blisters, you take this tool. Now, some people use a 3/8 inch drill with a burr head on it, a cutting head on it, which might look something like that, or a metal, like a tiny pineapple that you put into the drill. And the idea is to grind the blister out. Some people use that. Some people use a large grinder, and they will grind a very large area. I prefer this. I'm familiar with this tool. Now, fiberglass is at a molecular level permeable, meaning water vapor, very tiny molecules of water in the vapor form, will pass through the hull from the inside, from the bilge water and the water tanks if they're integral, out, and also from the outside in. Now, if when they are passing through the hull they find a void, a cavity in the hull, or they find a layer where one layer of fiberglass, one laminate, is not sticking very well to the next layer, then the water passing through will stop there, form a chemical reaction with the filler, with the resin that is there, and it'll form a liquid that tastes like vinegar, smells like styrene, and is acidic. And that will form, that water vapor going through causes osmosis, and a hydraulic pressure, it can exceed 200 pounds per square inch. So when you pop that blister, there's a very good likelihood that some of this acidic material will squirt out. so at you. It's extremely painful if you get it in your eyes. I wear glasses. Some people wear safety shields and so on. Now, here's a blister I have marked. Here's one which I've already opened up. The idea then is you take the Dremel tool and you grind away the blister. You open it up, grind away the blister like this until you get all the bad material, the decomposed fiberglass, cleaned out of that area. I'll open one up here. Which one? Let me do this one. You can see this is a small one, but you can see there is some liquid there coming out. That one wasn't on very high pressure. Open it up more. More liquid you can see now. And I will keep that. There, that one is cleaned out now. Now, after you get that cleaned out like that, and you've exposed good solid fiberglass, not fiberglass between the laminates that has been softened up, it turns into a mush. You get all that mush out of there until you have hard fiberglass. Then you take a pressure washer or a garden hose, like this machine, and you spray each one of these blisters to wash out that styrene, that chemical, and all the decomposed, all the rotten fiberglass, if you like. Get it out of there. Then you let it dry. Now you might let it dry for a week and then wash them all again, and let it dry for another week and wash it all again. Then when you run out of time, or it's dry enough, and you can measure the dryness two different ways. One is to use an expensive moisture meter, take a reading up here on the top sides and compare it to the reading in the hull. When they are the same, then it's time to start filling the blister. A different way of doing that is to take a clear piece of plastic film, tape it on a bottom part of the hull, and the moisture from the hull will come out underneath the clear plastic, and you'll be able to see it. If there's moisture coming out of the hull, it's not dry. Lift the plastic up, wipe it off, dry, put it back down, and wait another week or day or whatever and see if it dries out. When it's dry, when you have to do it, you're ready or you just have to do it, then you take you can take either a vinyl ester resin putty, or you can take an epoxy putty, or and fill these holes. But first, you have to coat the hole with either a vinyl ester resin, if you're going to use vinyl ester putty, or an epoxy resin, a thin epoxy resin with a brush. Paint it in that hole, and then epoxy resin will migrate up in between the layers and seal the damage. Then you fill it. Now, if you're going to use a vinyl ester filling putty, don't use epoxy. I prefer to use epoxy. It's the best. Epoxy is less water permeable than vinyl ester. So I will take a brush, thin epoxy resin, paint each of these holes, these cavities, with the resin, and when before that resin has completely set up, kicked, hardened, I'll take epoxy putty, which I can make using silicone, mixing silica in with colloidal silica in with epoxy resin, and I'll paint it in with a putty knife, put it into this cavity. I'll fill that cavity until it's almost level. If I go so that it stands proud, there's a bump here, I'm going to have to sand that off. And epoxy with colloidal silica is very hard to sand. I'd be making more work. So I'll put it on and it'll just be level, just a little bit shallow. Then when you're through with that, sand all the bottom down and put a coat of epoxy sealer on the bottom. Roll that on. 2 coats minimum. Up to 10 coats should be thick enough to keep water from getting into the back end. Is this going to work? Maybe. Blisters come back